Okay, so in my last video we went over drawing some basic shapes for eyes, as well as the overall face shape and hair. In this video we're going to talk a little bit more about some facial details that I didn't get a chance to cover in my last video. That'll include teeth and mouths, ears, and some of the shadows for noses. I'm also going to talk a little bit about clothing and how to create shadows to make the clothing look a little bit more realistic. Again, like I said in our first video, facial hair, you may choose or choose not to draw this. Some facial hair is going to be easier than others to draw. Leave that up to your discretion if you would like to do that or not. Okay, so let's first talk about teeth. Mouths are hard, and not all of them are going to be easy or look completely right. Okay, one thing that I've seen students do in the past is take this rounded rectangle and start drawing these weird looking like chiclet teeth. Don't do that. You're going to end up with a mouth that looks really weird. Let's start with our pen tool. Now, again, every mouth is going to be different, and I'm actually going to start by drawing these lips. And I'm going to draw them as two separate shapes. So let's start with his bottom lip. Just going to try and make it somewhat nice and smooth, following the colors of his lips. Okay, and they don't even necessarily have to touch. I'm going to draw two separate lip shapes, one for his top lip and one for his bottom lip. Okay, so there is one, and let's draw his other lip. Okay, no one's lips are completely perfect, okay, despite misconceptions. All right, here we go. Let me undo that one. Now, also, the other thing you need to consider is not all pictures are created equal either, right? So if you chose an image, that looks terrible. If you chose an image that is really pixelated, this may not work the best for you. And this lip is actually proven to be a little tricky. Let's do that a little less. There we go. Let's see if that looks decent. Okay, his lip's a funky shape. Now, again, with color, subtle. Like, we don't want ruby red lips on this guy. Make his lips match. Okay, so those are both the same color. Right. And I might take these and swap them to outline so I can see what I'm doing here. Now his teeth. Let's go around and draw his teeth. I'm going to draw them as one shape. If you wanted to go back and add a little bit of detail afterwards for the shadows, for the gaps in between, you could do that. I am not going to do that probably today. We'll see how they look and decide then. So I'm just going around all the tops of his teeth, okay, as best as I can. And it's a little tough because some of these teeth are hard to see. Right, like that kind of comes here. Here's where you kind of just have to decide. Remember back to our Illustrate project where I said you have to decide what's a shadow and what is not. Okay, go back to those skills that we did way back when, because now you need to decide what is going to look right as a tooth and what is not. Okay. So let's go all the way here. Notice I'm making some subtle shapes, subtle curves, not these crazy big curves. Little things are going to help you a lot along the way with these types of drawings. Especially trying to create smooth lines. All right, I'm almost there. Ooh, that one doesn't quite line up. Look, I'm looking at this point and I'm paying attention to where I'm going to line that up, right? Because teeth should be somewhat straight. There we go. Okay, so I've got teeth. They're not going to be totally white, but they'll be somewhat white. Let's flip his lips back around. I should probably bring his lips to the front, at least in some portion of this, right? And if I take a look with his skin, I can see that I'm missing something, right? There's these dark areas. So here's where overlapping shapes becomes important. I'm just going to start inside one of his lips, and I want a shape that's going to fill in the gap, right? So it doesn't really matter what it looks like within his lips because it's overlapping. But outside on these corners, it's important what it looks like, right? Because that's the part you're going to be able to see. So let's take a look, and let's make this dark. I'm going to send it to the back. And it looks like I might need to add some shapes for gums here. Yep. Okay. So behind here, I may need to take this, make another shape somewhere back here. Okay, that's a little bit lighter and does not have this shadow in it. All right, let's see how this looks if I take, whoops, some kind of gum color. Hard to find the right color. That may be the closest one right there. Or maybe that. Okay, so let's take both of those shapes and send them to the back. And flip this one around and see where we're at. Okay, obviously I wasn't super precise. There's some better things that I could have done to draw. But let's take a look. Oh, it looks like a mouth. Okay, again, it's a cartoon. If you wanted to go back and add some little lines here to separate some teeth, you can. But if we take a look at this, that is not too shabby. Okay, it could be a whole lot worse. And some of you may have tried to draw teeth before watching this video and come to realize that, yeah, teeth are hard. Okay, so we've got our mouth, we've got our teeth. Now let's look at this nose, because right now he doesn't have one. Okay, now we're not going to trace all the way around his nose, but what we are going to do is pay attention to shadows and things that are going to give the structure of his nose without having to draw the whole thing. So I'm just going to pay attention to shadows, okay, and I'm going to draw, let's take the color out. I'm going to draw kind of this shadowy shape. Right, that's going to give the idea of his nostril. Okay, here we go. And this may look different on everybody's drawing. It may be a little bit different. This may end up being two pieces, depending on what he starts to look like here. Okay, and you may even need to add a shape. Oops, sorry. You may even need to add a shape here to kind of give the idea of, hey, his nose has this shadow, right? This nose has a shape here. So let's grab that and let's give him a nostril on this side because, you know, humans, we have two. So there we go. You may need to add a little tiny shape here. And these shapes may even just end up being little crescent moon shapes. And maybe I don't even really see a shadow that looks like that. But it's going to help create the effect of a nose. Now, the color that I chose for that shadow is a little bit dark compared to his skin. So let's go back and revisit that color. So I'm just going to hold shift and select all of these nose shapes that I just drew. And I'm going to try and pick a little bit lighter of a color. I just want it to be a little darker than the one that I have for his skin tone. Let's see what this is going to look like. Okay, I can test it. Ooh, too light. I can take a look. That might work. It's a little bit yellow. If I get a little bit, whoops, if I get a little closer, I can even use my opacity and make this a little bit more subtle. Okay, that's starting to look like a nose, right? So now instead of drawing this whole big nostril shape, I've just got some little shadows, and maybe I want to add another shadow on this side to make it look a little bit more complete. Okay, two other things that I need to consider. His ears are pretty blank right now. You could also add some lines on his face, but look, he has no chin right now, so that's going to be important too. So let's talk about some ears. Same thing as we did with the nose. There's going to be some shadow shapes here, right, to kind of create this look of an ear. Okay, I'm just going to kind of follow along here, and it may not be perfect, and that's okay, because you're tracing this shadow. Right? And if it goes behind the hair, that's okay. And I'm going to end up using the same color I did for the nose because I think that'll look pretty good. Okay, then I'm going to send it to the back because I don't want it to be in front of his hair. Okay. There we go. Eyedropper that ear color. Send it to the back. Okay, so all these little shapes that don't quite necessarily make much sense while I'm drawing will hopefully end up coming together and giving me some kind of definition for what his ear is going to look like. Okay, and we're pretty close. Ears have some funky shapes to them. All right, let's take a look and see with his face. That's starting to look more like an ear, okay? Depending on your picture, you may add some more definition here, right? Or a shadow so that it looks a little bit more like he's got a separate ear. Now let's talk about his chin. A lot of people, there's a few ways you can do this. Yes, you could draw shadows. That works well. Other people like to do this where they use their knife tool, like this. Okay, grab my knife. Now, knife is risky because it's not super precise, but I can click and drag over here and carefully come around his chin, right, all the way across. And now I've got two shapes, right? So I can make his face one color, and then I can make his, I can make his neck a little bit darker of a color. Maybe not quite that dark. Maybe like this. So that it looks like he's got a separate face and neck, okay? Yes, you could use gradients on this if you like to get fancy. Like I said, you could also just add some shadow shapes. That is up to you. Right? For now, I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay? The final thing that I want to show you is his shirt, right? A lot of folks will trace by color, which is great. I'm going to hide his face for just a minute. And let's add another layer so I can draw his shirt on it. So a lot of you guys are just going to draw his shirt like this all the way around. Okay, let's just pretend I'm drawing his shirt. Okay, whoops. And his goes off the page. I'm just going to draw this one side of his shirt just for the sake of time. Okay, and I'm going to connect it here. All right, now he's got a blue shirt. That looks pretty plain, okay? Again, just like with the face, you can come back and add some shadows. So if you add a shadow here, this is going to give you the effect of, oh, he's got a collar, right? He's got a collared shirt on. So let's grab this, coming up to the corner so I can make a corner of the shirt, collar, and a little bit darker, okay? You're also probably going to want to add a line, even though it's real tough to see, where the collar ends. Okay? So come through here, and thin lines, right? Thin lines make a big difference, so let's do that. And even for shadow shapes like this. Now, you may want to change the opacity for some of these. Let's curve this around. But the more shapes that you add, the more detail it's going to give, and it's going to look a little bit more like a shirt. So obviously I did this really quickly. You may want to, again, adjust the opacity to give this a little bit lighter of a tone. But it's going to give you a little bit more detail and not look so much like a blob of blue shirt. Okay? Things like buttons too, adding those might be important for adding detail too. So overall, here's what I've got so far. He's starting to look like a human, which is good. And he's got eyes, he's got a mouth, he's got hair, he's got some shadows for his face. I want you guys to pay attention to these details as you're drawing. Yes, I know it's challenging. Remember that if you draw one person, you can copy and paste that person and use them in multiple frames of your project. So this is important when you're considering which image to trace, right? So think about that as you're drawing. Hopefully this was helpful, and I wish you guys luck on drawing people.